See, it's the same.
Good morning.
It's evening.
I know.
Welcome you all to the Dr. G Show with Dr. G and the Boss. And this is our first time on our YouTube channel. But we've been doing the show for 134 times.
Years.
So usually been on Facebook with this. So now we're going to try this in a different format and see how this works. So you guys will have it, it'll be better indexed for them. And you guys can then search by actual show, by topic, as opposed to digging through my old Facebook videos and...
Through your old disorganized files.
I know, right? So I try to find pictures to go, or the videos to download, to upload, to start the YouTube channel, and it sucked for me too, looking through there. So we'll see how this goes. It's a little bit different format, but I know today we're talking about the physiology of emotions, and what did we talk about before?
We talked about anger last week and anxiety the week before.
So today we're going to talk about angerstility. Or no, depression. Depression. Right.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about depression and the physiology of depression. And so if you guys have questions, feel free to post those. And I know a lot of you guys watch this off air, but now you can watch it on your TV, which is pretty cool. Do you know
How
that?
does that work? I know nothing
Smart
about
TV.
technology. I'm a...
So what you do is you
Luddite.
unplug your VHS from your TV and you throw it out in the yard, and then you throw your
People
big
don't use
bulky...
those anymore?
No, nobody does.
It's
And
rude.
then you get yourself a new TV that has smart TV on it, and you can get YouTube on your TV.
I really don't have a digital TV.
I know, you gotta get one.
I use a little box.
See, that's because you got good priorities. So, since this is our first one, we'll make sure to introduce ourselves. I'm Dr. G. I practice functional lifestyle medicine. I see patients all around the world.
And that is Dr. Patrick Garrett.
Oh, yeah, Patrick Garrett.
Yes.
And I have a DC, and I have 4 postdoctoral diplomates, and basically I practice functional lifestyle medicine, figuring out what's going on with people, restore it to normal, and then most things just kind of go away, which is nice. Cheap and easy to feel healthy and happy.
Yeah.
And you are Holly Hajajina.
You're right. And I don't have all of those credentials, but I do work in corporate wellness. I'm the corporate wellness director for the YMCA. I help companies develop wellness programs for their employees so that they can be happier and healthier and more productive at work. I also do healthy lifestyle coaching, so working one-on-one on a lot of different areas of health. So not just nutrition and physical activity, but we discuss emotions, we discuss social health, we discuss medical, financial, things like that. Also, I'm a yoga instructor, Pilates instructor, and do quite a bit of meditating and give some health presentations on those things, all of those things as well as working with Dr. Garrett here on our silly, live, weekly wellness talk show.
Yes. Wellness with an attitude, right?
Right.
Mostly from this side?
It is well deserved on this side.
No. All right.
So.
Well, we're gonna fill this out. So used to were people on Facebook post questions, all that, but hopefully people are figuring out where to go. But I know a lot of people watch this off too. So make sure to post your questions, comments as we go through this. We want to hear from you guys, and look forward to your questions here. All right. So
today we are
yes.
going to talk about depression, and like we said before, we talked about anxiety, and we're talking about the physiology of these emotions as well. So we're going to talk about the causes of these things, the effects of these things on the body, as well as what kind of treatment options are available. But then I think the premise of this particular show is to really talk about what are best practices in general. We look at communities around the world that are living into their hundreds, vital and energetic and happy. And what are those people doing? So we'll speak to some of those best practices for tonight for these emotional disturbances as well.
Well, and one thing that I found that was pretty interesting was we looked at, if I can find it here, what was it? The countries that use the most antidepressants, and guess which country was the highest?
I know what I'm gonna guess. I'm wondering what you guys might guess, but I know that you like to say that America is number one in all things. So
Whole thing's bad though. It's infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, or no, infant mortality, yeah,
Heart
and then
disease.
maternal heart disease, cancer, diabetes. We're the best at it. And so one of the things I always tell patients all the time is just, America is the best at feeling the worst. We're the most anxious, depressed country in the world. And I think France is the second, which is a little bit weird. But let me see, I want to find, let's see, antidepressant use by country. I clicked out of the stat, here we go. All right, so the U.S. is the highest one for antidepressant use. And of course, we talked about before, even WebMD now verifies that it is not an antidepressant problem. It's not a serotonin problem. So after 60 years of research, they have failed to show that you ever have an actual neurotransmitter dysfunction, which is very freeing because 70% of those that end up on antidepressants often end up worse, and the 30% is placebo, which is not a very good placebo amount for that medication use.
Yeah, so some of what I was looking at as well in terms of the research was that, yes, they're saying now that it's not so much about having a chemical imbalance, but that, and maybe you can speak to this as well, but they're looking at now as well what's happening with the nerve cell connections, nerve cell growth, and nerve circuit functioning. So someone can take antidepressants but not have effects from those positive effects from those antidepressants for several weeks, even, how long did you say, even months?
Well, like 6 weeks is when they expect you to take 6 weeks to even notice any changes.
So
right?
they're thinking that it's not the fact, because what the antidepressants or the mood meds do is they flood the brain with those neurochemicals, right? Is that correct?
No, so basically you have like a neuron that communicates to another neuron. So all your nerves, you have more nerves in your brain than you have stars in the sky. Did you know that?
I would believe that.
It's very poetic.
Yeah.
So they never actually touch. And so basically this end and this end get really, really, really close, and then they have neurotransmitters that then are secreted across, and then they bind to the receptors on the other side to turn things on, like hitting a light switch. And then they're released and they go back and reabsorb to the other side.
Yeah.
And so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, basically when that neurotransmitter goes across and turns it on, it goes back to be reabsorbed and won't let it.
Oh.
So it goes back and hits the light switch again. And so it's just like those jackasses on the, unless it's you, then it's okay. But those jackasses that the lights push for down on the elevator, and then they go over there and they hit it again and hit it again and hit it again and hit it again.
And you're saying that's what the serotonin reuptake inhibitor does?
Right. And so the problem with this is it gives the artificial impression that you are making more neurotransmitters than you really have, thus downregulating your others through the negative feedback mechanism for hormones and neurotransmitters. But the other big problem with this is that only 5% of serotonin that they're messing with is in the brain. 95% of serotonin is actually outside of the brain. It's all in the gut. Like even all that gut function is actually serotonin. And so that's why the first like Zelnorm and those kind of medications were, they worked on serotonin, but they killed people. And so they took them off the market, they made them a little bit better, and then they killed people, and then they finally just took those off the market. So that's why you saw that and then it disappeared. But that's because serotonin, you have this global effect. And even like most serotonin floats with, I believe it's on platelets to make bone cells. Like, isn't that crazy?
So it has other functions.
Right, so it has all these other functions, and so then if you mess with those neurotransmitters, you end up causing all this other catastrophic fallout from that. And so, like, even one of the studies that I read in Science Direct, they talked about, like, they were using antidepressants on mice, you know, because mice get sad. You know how it's kind of sad to be a mouse? And ever since Tom died, Jerry's all like...
Oh, no.
All right.
No.
So... They would have spontaneous fractures, and they were like, what the hell's going on here? But it turns out that it caused more bone loss than it did neural improvement in the brain.
Okay. So...
I feel like you don't care about all that. Like, you just...
I feel like you really want me to gush over, like, literally everything you say.
You don't care...
Oh,
all.
Dr. G. That was so awesome.
No, like, I don't even think you're listening. You're just like, you're like a guy. You're like, okay, I'm just let him talk until I can talk about what I really want to talk about. That's what I'm talking about.
No, it is. Yeah, I'm just keeping you on track. All right. Okay. So it's not as simple as what we've been led to believe in terms of the chemicals, the serotonin, the balance in the brain. There's more to it, or maybe less to it, depending on your perception. So some other causes of depression.
There's more causes?
There could be other causes.
All right.
So we could have faulty mood regulation, but I question what the cause is of that faulty mood regulation. We're going to talk about causes outside of just the serotonin depletion or deficiency theory.
Yeah.
But other things, like people do have genetic vulnerability, and we'll talk about that as well, because what's exciting about this genetic vulnerability, when you hear the word, he just wants to show you that.
It's that.
So
Are we going to talk about methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase pathway?
Yeah, we might. I
All
might
right.
allow you to talk about that.
Dr. G and the boss.
So we can have genetic vulnerability, but not all hope is lost with that. So we'll talk about that as well.
You just call me fat?
Yes. So we have stressful life events. No? Yes?
Yes.
We have medical problems or medications that can also be contributors to depression. So, and usually when depression, or especially chronic depression, arises, we're looking at multiple factors that are interacting, that are in combination and in concert, not just one issue like I have low serotonin, right? We're looking at multiple factors. We want to look at the big picture. By the way, I want to say we're testing this out today with this YouTube, and so if you're able to make comments, are we able to see live comments while we talk?
We should be able to.
I see that, at least I saw on your, when you had it up over there, that we had people who were viewing us. And if we do, we would love to interact with you. This is new for us today, but the fun part about our shows is that we like to talk back and forth with you. So if you will leave a comment and say hello, just to let us know that you are there, then maybe we can have a little bit of fun. We like some funny comments as well, but also welcome questions. Hey,
there.
Yes, there's a comment.
Oh, so it does go up there. All right.
Okay, it's very similar. Are you seeing us from Facebook, Carolyn, or did you? I don't understand how this works, so let us know. Well, all I do is go to Facebook. I don't go to multiple things, and I barely have a television. Hey, we can't. Oh yeah,
No,
we
you
can't
see it
him
here.
up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is good. It works the same as Facebook Live.
Okay. Okay, so we have multiple causes for depression.
Yeah. Was was guys one of those?
Yeah, relationships.
Relationship?
Yeah.
Is that?
Tell us if you feel comfortable sharing And as we always say, what happens on the Dr. G show stays on the Dr. G show and with the rest of the world.
That's right. It's just between us and 7 billion people.
Literally everyone else. If you feel so inclined or less inhibited to share your experiences with depression yourself, or maybe a loved one who has depression, please share that with us as well. Make comments with us as well about that. So I'm still going to lean a little bit towards these nerve cell connections, nerve cell growth, nerve circuit functioning in terms of depression, because neurons that fire together do wire together, and we know that the brain is plastic. So it can change. Those neurons can form together and get really cemented together. They can come apart. They can prune. So there's lots of changes that can happen within the brain based on how we treat our brain. Oh, cool. Carolyn, she's telling me, yes. I went to Facebook and saw a post. Okay. And logged in from YouTube. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Do people have to log in? Why don't they log in?
That's what I mean. That's why I'm just kind of wondering.
I don't think you have to, because I watch stuff without ever logging in.
Okay. But maybe you're always logged in. Whoa.
The government.
Whoa.
All right. Yeah, I like your idea too of synaptic pruning. Most people don't know that your brain is actually the largest it'll ever become when you're a baby.
Aww.
And you have all this big tree ready to make
even though
all
your
kinds
head
of
gets
fruit.
bigger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know your eyes don't change size, right?
What?
The eyes are the same. That's why babies always have big eyes. Eyes don't grow.
What?
Mm-hmm. And your foot fits right here. Did you know that?
Yeah, but that grows.
No.
Those both grow.
That grows.
But the brain doesn't increase in size.
No, it increases.
Okay.
Yeah, but eyes don't.
And you just said the baby's brain was
I'm just distracted with knowledge that I actually know.
Is that because in a baby's brain they have more, they can connect more and have more potential?
Right. So think of it like a baby's brain is just tons of potential. And so basically you say like, okay, is my kid a kid from Switzerland where we're going to learn 5 languages? No, we're American. So we're going to learn 1 language, right? And then we're going to shame people that know 2. So then we're like snipping off those branches, right? And then it's just like, am I going to learn a bunch of math and science? No, that's crazy talk. So I'm going to snip those off. Am I going to learn to word work? I'll snip those off, right?
Yeah.
Learn to sail. So basically we take all that potential that we have, and then we just slowly snip and snip and snip away, right?
What we don't use.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, if you want, like when we talk about plastic, right? Not actual plastic from petroleum, but plastic as dynamic and changing and evolving, right? So that's where, like, when they talk about the studies of anti-aging of the brain, learning stuff that you don't know, and of course exercise, like learning a new language.
I'm anti-exercise.
Learning a new language, it reverses your brain to a 25-year-old. Did you know that?
So by continuing to learn, you are increasing your potential, your cortical potential.
Learning hard stuff.
Yeah. Well, and also when you're young, I know before age 5 or so, I think between the ages of like 3 and 5 or 3 and 6, there's a time of development that's critical for learning. Yeah, so if you don't snatch that time up for learning, those areas will prune away and they won't develop as fully.
That's right.
So, so talking about the brain and depression, some of the effects of depression on the brain, for those who have regular bouts of depression, they can develop a smaller hippocampus, or they do have a smaller hippocampus. For women, it's 9 to 13% smaller.
Nice, yeah. Well, and did you know, so that in your brain, you have your big brain on the outside, the cortices, and then you have that kind of middle brain. And then this is the part of the brain that hangs down and becomes part of the brainstem that becomes your spinal cord. And that's where your primal function is, right? That's where you breathe and exist. Like that's your heart rate, all this stuff, right? And so that primal area actually will start shrinking in response to either like maternal stress when you're developing or chronic stress over life. But you know, you talked about it shrinks up to like 8 to 10%.
9 to 13%.
9 to 13%.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that even the outer brain, right, the cortices, the cortex, it can shrink 4% smaller for people that are overweight, and up to 8 to 10% smaller if someone's obese. Isn't that crazy?
Do you think that's because of ongoing exposure to stress hormones?
Well, part of that,
Or
so we kind of
sugar, or...
right. So like the internal one that you're talking about, that's that response to stress, and really it's survival of the fittest. It's if you can't pull your shit together, then you probably shouldn't survive, which is the hard truth of that. But we have the ability to dynamically change that outcome by doing a lot more nurturing and self-nurturing, and a lot more nature, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a twofold part of really kind of like, hey, your body's designed, the nature of your body is designed to recover and regenerate, but it takes the nurturing of that plastique or physiology to do that.
Yeah.
And
I like that you use the word nurturing. I'm going to give you your one compliment for the show tonight.
okay, I got one drug reference to make too.
I only give you
One
one compliment, and my coworker Tyrone, I only give him one compliment maybe once a week.
Blattrick gets one?
He only gets one.
One? That poor guy.
But I like that you use the word nurturing, because that's different than discipline, or being very rigid, about having a rigid mindset about how we make behavior change, how we transform our lives and to be healthier and have higher quality of life. So when you think about, when I hear the word nurturing, that connotation for me feels warm and supportive and healing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and much of what you talked about last week, as you droned on and on.
As you were jealous of all of my vast knowledge.
You're owning this stuff though. But so many patients come in with depression, and it's that chronic depression, but it's almost, and I don't want to be too flippant about it, but it's almost like just on and off for people once they start nurturing themselves, instead of really kind of like that like you kept talking about, that non-judgmental acceptance of having these emotions, having these feelings of just saying like, gosh, I feel depressed. Isn't that interesting? Now what can I do about this, right? And so it's like, what am I eating? How am I drinking? What am I breathing? Am I having social? We are these bio-psycho-social, spiritual, sexual beings, and we have to have all these kind of parts met, and depression ends up being the outcome of basically life out of balance. And as we try to eat our way back to happiness and distract from the sadness, eventually people reach that breaking point where they just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that kind of make up our tendency, or let's just say tendency for depression or for emotional imbalance. We have our genetic component. We have temperament. Our temperament can shape our behavior. We have our experiences, which can also shape our behavior. And all of these things turn into habitual reactions and thoughts and perceptions, right? And these can develop early on, but they can continue to develop as well. But a lot of times those are developed early on, and they influence how you feel. And so you automatically sort of fall back on these mechanisms of perception and awareness when things happen, like loss, disappointment, rejection, pain. When those things come up, we tend to rely on those old coping mechanisms, right, which really are not, most of the time, not based on nurturing truths about ourselves and about the world and about life.
Yeah. Don't always believe what you think, right? And we kind of are, like you, so she said that, like, what was it, 90,000 thoughts? 70,000 thoughts?
60 to 70,000 thoughts per day.
Yeah.
Is what we tend to typically have.
And
90% of those thoughts are negative.
Yeah. So that's that synaptic pruning of like, am I going to be happy? Am I going to be happy? And then basically kind of like withering your hippocampus and all that down to where you just are kind of conditioned for sadness and depression. And then the minute something comes up, you don't have that plasticity to overcome it. And then you revert back to the same things of coping with food and distracting and to the point you can't. So that's where when you look at lifestyle practices of really kind of expanding and developing that kind of resiliency that you have for depression and anxiety and all those things, the resiliency factors.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, and we've talked about it in almost every show, just a little bit, but the stress response and the HPA axis?
So not everybody has HPV access, but mostly it's just in clubs.
Let's talk about vaccines because why don't we start that topic up? Go ahead.
So it's actually HTPA.
Okay. And go.
So it's the hippocampal.
Hypothalamic. I thought.
Yeah, hypothalamic, thyroid, adrenal, pituitary. So HPA is usually hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, but you also thyroid's in there too. Because eventually, if you just exhaust your hormones, then T4 doesn't convert to T3, and then T3 free goes down, and then you end up with thyroid issues. So that access is a constant feedback that's going around in your body to say, how well am I coping at stuff? And do I need a little bit more cortisol, a little bit epinephrine, norepinephrine to kind of function? Do I need to amp up my thyroid? But the problem exists is when we just have too much stress. That prolonged cortisol that just starts creeping up and up and up and up like that, eventually it just quits.
That's how it sounds when it does it too. Up and up and up. And up.
And then your thyroid tries to pick up, and then it just kaputs, right? And so the fix for thyroid is the fix for adrenal, and the fix for adrenal is stop exhausting your damn adrenals, which we talk about a lot.
So we're stopping external stresses, or
Right.
how we react to external stresses.
And like I don't ever like to give people a lot of coping mechanisms. I like the plasticity changes. Rewire your brain. Don't cope, rewire.
So cope kind of sounds like we're putting a Band-Aid on it, but we're not actually addressing the root cause is what you're saying.
Right. And there is one caveat to while you're changing, something like adrenal adaptogens are kind of helpful, but they only will help for so long.
Can I ask something?
Absolutely.
So neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, glutamate, GABA.
Right.
Should people supplement with those?
Absolutely not.
He says absolutely not. Why?
Because the negative feedback loop, your receptors say you're not making enough, so your gland says, I'll make more. And then your receptor says you made too much, and your gland says, well, I'll make less. And it's always too much, too more, too much, too less, too much, too less, little. Too much, too little, too much, too little, within a normal range, right? But if we take a neurotransmitter or trick the body into believing it has more neurotransmitters, or we take a hormone, whether it's bioidentical or synthetic, the receptor then thinks you're making more, so then the downregulation happens.
Yeah,
and
so
you
the
make
body
less.
makes less.
So you feel good in the beginning, but eventually 3 months later you're just like, I'm not feeling good, and then they double the dose, and then they do it twice a day, and then eventually you're screwed because you're just dependent on that
Does
dose.
that happen with mood stabilizers as well? Downregulation?
Are you asking for a friend?
No.
So what kind of mood? Like Xanax or something?
Anything.
So it depends.
There might be people taking lots of different types of mood stabilizers.
So, you know, if you look at something like tryptophan becomes 5-HTP, which some people take tryptophan, right? But you get tryptophan. Why is it not converting to 5-HTP? And then 5-HTP converts to serotonin. Serotonin converts to melatonin for sleep. So mood, sleep, right? So if people take serotonin, it actually causes more problems. If they take melatonin, it actually causes problems. But if they take like 5-HTP or tryptophan supplements, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
That won't downregulate because your
won't-
body doesn't produce that naturally. That's
Right.
That's a component.
You're putting in products.
Okay.
And telling the body, here, I'm going to give you some help. Kind of like glucosamine. Glucosamine and chondroitin sulfate for knee things helps, but it's not the solution. Why the hell are you degenerating your knee so fast,
Yeah.
right?
So people might not know would it be possible to put a list or post a list of like
Yeah.
the neurotransmitters and the hormones that people should not supplement with?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
So, precursors are fine. And that's where, like, I really like adaptogens for short-term kind of coping while people are making long-term lifestyle changes for that full neuroplasticity to get their brain back. But those things, basically, they're great because they don't mess anything up, but if your cortisol's too high, it'll help lower it. But if it's too low because you've exhausted it, it'll help bring it back up.
Yeah.
And every country has their own. So ashwagandha, shistosandra, rhodiola, eulithro.
That would be
licorice
another
root.
list we should post.
We should. But, riddle me this, Batman. Which adaptogen is traditional for Americans?
Which adaptogen?
Native Americans.
I know what it is.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. It's
What?
Tulsi.
God dang it. All right.
He thinks I don't know anything.
Smarty britches. What's the other name for Tulsi?
Holy basil.
All right, fine. Whatever.
So, but those things have effects, differing effects as well, the adaptogen. So we want to ideally get those in food or tea form, right? Can you get adaptogens in food form, or is that just the herb itself?
Well, so like other countries, they'll take a little branch of it and they'll put it in their tea or their drink.
Can they put it in soup?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can use it's just like tea. Everything's tea if you put it in hot water.
Yeah.
So it's just all leaves.
Yeah.
Right? And sticks.
So try different tea forms. Different things might have different effects. It might affect you differently. I've tried different ones, and they do seem to be a little bit. I noticed differing effects.
What have you tried?
Ashwagandha, licorice root. I've not tried shistosandra. Shistosandra, right? What else have I tried? There's others.
What about holy basil?
Tulsi and holy basil.
What about valerian root?
I've tried valerian. That's a little bit strong for me.
Yeah, that's pretty potent.
Plus, if you tried valerian, it works on the same the benzodiazepine pathway. It works on that same pathway as Xanax. So you wouldn't want to take that in the morning, right?
No, some people do. So I had this patient once had so much depression, anxiety that she could not focus at work. Right.
Okay.
So I told her, at valerian you take about 200 milligrams during the day, standard dose. About 1,000 a night before bed, right?
Okay.
And so it's a natural muscle relaxer that relaxes you at your muscles so it doesn't dope you down. So it shouldn't make you tired. And it works on the benzodiazepine pathway, so it kind of calms you down so you can just kind of function. And, but I didn't tell her the dose. And then I checked back with her and I was like, hey, because we were just Facebook friends. And I said, so, how are things going at work? Because she was just like about to lose it. And she was just like, man, that valerian's awesome. Like, I feel so amazing. And she's like, I just don't even care about everybody's nonsense at work, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. How much have you been taking? She's like, 1,000 milligrams a day during
Wow.
the daytime.
That's intense.
And I was like, well, I did not know you could take that much. So that was pretty interesting. So, yeah, so that was...
So it's also going to be person dependent, right? Your therapeutic dose of anything.
Right. Size and your toleration of it, how your CYP genes work.
Because for me, I might not get out of bed if I was taking that much in the morning. It might just really lower me so much because it's an anti-anxiety that.
So you always want to take
energy.
those adaptogens like on the weekend, kind of see how they feel for you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's two. You said.
Oh,
you
man.
just said I came up with two good ideas. Two compliments.
I'm going to remember for next time.
That's twice. Now I have to get none next time, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So the other thing is like one of my favorites for patients is the Yogi bedtime tea and Yogi tension tamer. Those adaptogens are one of the few that patients come back and are like, oh my God, that was amazing.
Celestial Seasons makes attention tamer.
That's inappropriate. Not celestial seasoning.
Yogi tea doesn't make a tension tamer.
Well, whatever it's not celestial. It's another.
Tension tamer, I think, is celestial seasonings.
No, not that one. But there's one that Yogi makes.
So there's 2 bedtime teas.
What does Dr. Padilla drink?
There's a caramel bedtime, and it's a sleepy time. I think it's a sleepy time.
Oh, Sleepy Time is by Celestial. That thing sucks.
Well, you know what? No matter what tea you pick, look at the ingredients and see if it has some of these adaptogens that we have mentioned, like valerian. The valerian for me at night is too strong. I don't know, for some reason I wake up in the middle of the night with valerian, but if I do the other one that has a poppy base.
Yeah.
The other Yogi caramel bedtime tea, that one's a little bit more subtle for
I feel like we should flip that. Like, you're not strong enough to handle valerian tea.
Or maybe my body is so pure enough that that throws me out of balance.
If your body was pure, you wouldn't need it in the first place.
Whatever. Maybe
Do
not
you
that
give-
high of a dose.
Do you give your cats it?
No, where's that? Why you always gotta bring my cats into stuff?
I don't know. I have cats.
So here's the thing overall, and like when we're talking about adaptogens, I hope this kind of gives you hope, because even though we are we can be genetically predisposed, our temperament might be predisposed towards depression, our experiences might cause us depression. None of these things are unchangeable.
That's right.
So we can change any of these things. So it's hopeful, and we want to approach that in multiple ways if necessary, because depression isn't caused by just one thing. It's probably caused by multiple things, right? Right?
Yeah.
Are you disagreeing with me?
No, I'm thinking the one thing.
The one thing?
Yeah.
The serotonin theory?
No, like if someone has a real crappy relationship.
Oh,
or
you're
something
trying
like
to
that,
think
or-
of. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because
All right.
maybe that is possible. Maybe I'm not being broad enough in my presentation. But so let's talk about trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma as the root cause as one variable for depression. So it may leave individuals more vulnerable
Yeah.
to depression later in life. It can be anger turned inward. And I wanted to discuss this. I wish we would have discussed this last show, because
What's
I
that?
was thinking about our last show on anger, and I was like, what are all the causes of anger? I just kept going through my mind, and the one thing we didn't really talk a lot about, pain.
Definitely pain.
Pain or trauma.
Yeah, pain's very good for depression, because same thing is it downregulates. So your body, like Skinner's box, your body's constantly trying to cope. And so if you're in constant pain, it downregulates your own neurotransmitters and shrinks the hippocampal area and the cortices for that.
Yeah.
To the point where your brain also, like if you look at like a normal brain scan, a functional MRI, lots of blood flow to those areas of the brain all over, so you can have this like full body experience of your environment. But people that are constantly in pain end up only having little segments, so that they don't get the same joy out of life because of the chronic pain. So then you have basically a 2-tiered approach to that patient.
Well, and I was talking about emotional pain. Were you talking about physical pain?
Same.
Yeah.
Same,
We'll get to physical pain as well.
Is there a difference between physical and emotional pain?
Maybe not. Maybe the sensations are the same. I guess we'd have to ask the thalamus. That processes sensory information.
Yeah, and the thalamus dramatically decreases blood flow to all those parts, because all sensory from the entire body goes through these 2 little eggs in your brain called the thalamus or thalami.
Uh-huh.
And then those go out. Like they're the circuit board or the breaker box for the rest of your brain for the interpretation.
Yeah.
And so every bit of sensory from the lower body has to go through there and then goes to the brain.
Yeah.
But as that blood flow shrinks to that area, basically you have less ability for that. You always have the ability to change it, but the actual then,
I think it affects awareness
presentation.
too, because the thalamus can
Yeah.
connect and start connecting with the amygdala as well. And so you've got amygdala's emotion, thalamus is sensory, right? And so
Right.
one might be affecting the other might be affecting the other, right?
Right. Yeah, it becomes kind of cyclic.
But they did this study on monkeys.
Which were only 3% genetically different from a monkey.
So they this kind of a little bit sad, but they separated these baby monkeys from their mothers, and they went through these stages of attachment trouble, right? They went from fury, okay, so that goes back to our anger talk,
The
right?
baby monkeys?
Baby monkeys.
Yeah.
So from that loss or that stress, their stress hormones were up in general throughout all of this, and it stayed up, but they went to fury first. So there's our anger, right?
Yeah.
Then turned to despair. So now we're turning into sadness and grief. And eventually, with prolonged distance, it turned to apathy, where they just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
So
what are that's kind of like the stages of like grief and loss too, you know?
Uh-huh.
But that acceptance or the apathy, I think that's where people get stuck. But I think outside of that, I mean, that's where that if you like the hero's journey, you know, like Dr. Campbell's work, you basically are in that status quo of like, you know, screw it, his life sucks, and I might as well just be a part of, you know, just kind of exist. And you can't believe that you can thrive and dynamically change and rewire your brain. And so I think people get apathetic big time.
Well, and
right?
I think that, keep that question in mind. Thank you for the question. We'll answer that in just a second. I think that apathy can have a positive attribute and a negative. It could be a healthy detachment, right? Where let's say you broke up with your boyfriend or whatever, and you process through
I don't have a boyfriend.
Dr. Patrick, he broke up with his boyfriend. And okay, so went through the fury, went through the despair, and came to acceptance, where maybe you do develop kind of a healthy detachment, or it could be apathy, where I can't attach anymore with anyone and I'm closed off, or I won't. And so there's just kind of a numbness or a...
So what's the healthy pathway for that?
What do you mean?
So if that's the tradition, like anger, then despair. Because, yeah, you know, it's just like, it's not fair, and you get angry. And then it's just like, oh, woe is me. And then it's like, fine, I won't go do anything ever anymore.
Well, I do know that studies on divorce say that when you are able to hold, what's the word?
Money?
Both, you're able to see both the good and the bad aspects of your former spouse.
Yes.
That's when you know you've come closer to full circle in terms of healing, because you can weigh both of those things. They're not just evil.
Right. Yeah.
You can see the big picture, so that is one indication that you have done some healing work.
Yeah.
And because you can see it as it is.
That's funny, because the children divorce workshop that they make you go through in Kansas, when you get divorced, if you have children, you have to go through this thing, and we went through KIPCOR, so you have to write what are the good traits about your ex and all these things. And for me, it was real easy, because it was like, yeah, you know, I don't like her, and I don't want to be with her, but she's still a person. Like, you're still attracted to that person. You still like things about that person. So they don't have to be evil just to not be with them.
Yeah.
But then some people are like that, to where it's just like that rejection of like, that other person has to be evil because they rejected me, kind of thing, you know? But yeah, once they get to that, just like, you know, you get past all the noise and all the frustration, all the pain, and it's just like, and you can like be normal co-parents and like exist, and that's like the mecca for that.
Right.
That's when you know the healing's there. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think in terms of depression, when we have traumas occur, it's important to process that, to understand it, to become aware of the variables of what caused that to occur. But then most importantly, to nurture yourself through the process so that you can have a healthy outcome and a healthy detachment, and you're not stuck in one of those areas of grief or one of those areas of processing where you're just kind of hitting that same area, that same thought or that same trauma trigger or that same PTSD, whatever it is. Would probably be in general important for you to seek some therapy if possible, along with support yourself with some healthy lifestyle practices.
Right. And we had a question too by R&S Gehring. Yeah.
R&S. Is that two people? Oh, Sherilyn.
Oh, it is Sherilyn. Okay, yeah. So, With that, so the valerian long term is fine. Adaptogens long term theoretically are fine. You know, it's okay. But it's just kind of like where you see people with golden seal and or see, like it says, don't use more than 2 weeks. But it's really like, are you fixing the underlying things?
Yeah, so are you using the adaptogen as your kind of your crutches in order to develop other lifestyle behaviors that would allow you to maybe not be dependent on it, if possible, right? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's how we want to use supplements in general, is to help stabilize you, help support you while you work on these other areas of your life to kind of balance those things back out.
And hope-wise, you know, when we talk about the treatment stuff, you know, we know that the medication doesn't work, and we know that even WebMD says that now, and most major journals actually parrot that same thing of like, it's not working. What we said was the cure is not the cure, but the cure, there is lots and lots of hope for those that are hopeless. You know, I know that we're going to go into that. But I want you guys to not feel like you're, you know, if you have depression, know that it really can be that easy to change. But it's just the rewiring that has to take place. It's not passive, but it's actively just taking a stand and saying, tomorrow's going to be different. Today's going to be different. I'm going to choose to do things even though I don't feel good to do them.
But I'm also going to choose to figure out ways in order to support myself and ask
Nurture.
for help.
Mm-hmm.
Nurturing help from positive friends, from positive professionals.
Wait, not just your buddies?
So if you need additional help and support, that's going to also be important as well. Can you speak just a little bit for those who may be on medications currently? And I personally would encourage those people, what derived benefit from those medications, because I speak with these people day and day when I coach.
Yeah.
And you can't tell someone to go off their medication. I can't tell
Right.
someone to go off their medication, right? I can't say I have to have trust with someone and I need to support that trust with them. And so my encouragement then is what kind of lifestyle practices can we do to help support whatever that medication is doing for that person.
Right.
But if someone wanted to transition off medication, or wanted some other thoughts, what would you say?
Well, the goal is always not to take people off medications, but to create it to where they don't need medical management anymore, right? That the lifestyle really has changed, that they can just feel healthy and happy every day and not need it. But prescribing wise, I mean, yeah, the antidepressants are one of those, in any of those kind of mood stabilizers, any of that stuff, you don't just go off those, right? And so, like, don't, you know, meds are bad, they have all these side effects, there's nutrient depletions. But yeah, but create it to where you don't need it. That's really the key there, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, technically, you know, just go with your provider. If they wrote that, you have to go by what it says. But if you're making lifestyle changes, then talk to your provider and say, hey, look, can we lower this dose over the course of like 3 months? I'm making all these lifestyle changes. I'm starting to do yoga and meditation. I'm being more mindful. I'm eating low glycemic, nutrient-dense foods, and I'm getting some exercise. And I really feel like I'm starting to feel a lot better. Could we lower this as long as I monitor it? And typically, as long as you monitor what you're doing, most docs are pretty cool with lowering your doses and getting you off your meds.
Yeah.
It's just most people won't do it. And so for those people, it's fine, but you know,
Right.
you just
That's when it just becomes the crutch.
right.
But that's why it's important to take very small steps that are consistent and realistic and doable in terms of lifestyle. And then also, and consider your expectations. So we want to look at doing these things over time. This is not something that's an overnight process. But then continuing to work towards creating that support system, putting yourself in environments that are supportive, with people that are supportive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And there's you know, and again, it's like I tell patients, you have to do anything I say. I'm just here to provide kind of expertise, and your other doctors provide expertise, and then you decide what the hell you want to do, right?
Yeah.
But there's no judgment.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be on drugs, but be aware of why you're taking, take care of the nutrient side effects or the depletions, and it's not judgment based of like, you have to be off your meds and you have to make these changes. But what if you didn't need them because you could rewire your brain and feel better?
And what if there was a less risky, less expensive, long-term solution that addressed the root of what's causing that depression, or the roots?
Right. Because, even when we talk about genetic, right? We often think of like, well, that's my destiny. But the reality is DNA is not your destiny. Even like at KU, we're doing this research on the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase pathway and its relation to mood and depression, anxiety, that kind of stuff, right? Which we call proteogenomic psychiatry, and it's all really just cutting edge stuff. But that pathway, why it's so important, it sounds inappropriate. It's amazingly inappropriate, but it's the thing that regulates things like your thyroid and your sleep and your mood and your brain function. And so even if you have that genetic mutation, which you can easily figure out, like we have patients that do 23andMe. If you're going to do any genetic testing, do 23andMe, so they test everything. They only show you this much. But then you come to someone like me or another provider where we can actually download the raw data, put it through another software, and actually go through and talk about any of the other 25,000 genes that you have and what those mutations really mean. And so even people that have the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase pathway mutation, some of those are non-effectual, your 1298 and your C677T or TT, those ones are the most affected, but not always. But if they are, then you do a methylfolate, and then you get that pathway back to your bioterapin and your PEA and your all these acronyms and stuff. But you basically get to feel good, even if you have a mutation. It just says, great, you have it. How do we
It gives you
that?
some more direction
for
your unique physiology and genetic makeup.
Right. So even DNA, even if you do, like, let's say mom was really massively depressed while you were in her belly, right? And then you ended up having a smaller hippocampus because of that, and hypothalamus, and so then you have less ability to react in really rational ways that will allow you to feel good. Great, change it.
Yeah.
Regenerate, regrow, redevelop. Just like we said, your brain shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And then we say, I'm going to learn a new language. Oh, it's hard. Great. Force it to work harder. Your brain is just like every other muscle in your body, to where you say, I went to the gym and I did some barbells and I was so weak. So I'm just going to quit. I should just quit, right?
So I would challenge that thought too, that if you have that thought, oh, it's hard, that is just a thought. That is not a truth.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to let go of some of those,
Well, I like
some of
that,
those
though.
self-defeating thoughts, huh?
I like that. When the patients are like, oh, it was really hard. Yeah, great. It means you need it more.
Yeah.
Work harder.
Yeah, it will get easier, just like strengthening a muscle, like you said.
Suck it up, buttercup.
So muscle building. Some other things that affect depression. Seasonal affective disorder.
That's not real.
Let's talk about it.
Did you know Denmark has more dark days than America, but even with that, they don't have seasonal affective disorder at the same rates we do?
So
they actually are the happiest country in the world.
The Harvard study said only 1 to 2% of people actually have seasonal affective disorder.
Harvard, see, that's what I'm talking about.
You thought I was going to go some.
I thought you were,
direction.
and I was just like, okay, no.
So only 1 to 2%.
Yeah, and if you take, so vitamin D is a big part of that too, which is you get from the sunlight for free.
And I was going to say, we have an epidemic of low vitamin D. So
because vitamin D is made from cholesterol, and we take a drug that lowers cholesterol, which makes vitamin D.
But I don't take a cholesterol drug, and I tested low for vitamin D.
Well, that's because you
So
don't go
why was that?
outside. YMCA.
So theoretically it is kind of true that if you are not outside that you could develop seasonal affective disorder.
Right. So go outside.
So it does exist.
Go outside.
At first you were saying it didn't exist.
Well, that's just like, man, I don't do any exercise. I get really weak and I can't open a jar, so I got muscular wasting disease. Yeah, great. Freaking go outside.
So you're saying don't lean on the diagnosis as an identity.
Right.
Like, oh, this is me. I have this disorder. It
Yeah.
basically just means you were not in the sun enough.
Right. Get the hell outside and live your life. Right? The average American now is vitamin D deficient, and nobody goes outside because we think the sun causes cancer, because we believe that God hates Americans, so he created the sun to kill Americans, but only since about 1935. Because before 1935, God was like, you know what? Don't kill those Americans yet. I like them. Less freedom.
I read somewhere that you can get 50,000 IU of vitamin D just from 15 to 20 minutes in the sun.
Did you hear that from me? Because that's what I'd be telling people.
I learned that before I met you.
Are you serious? 5,000 to 40,000 IUs from 15 minutes in the sun from 10 to 2.
It feels amazing too.
It takes nothing.
Just go out, do a little bit of sunbathing.
Even on
you
cloudy
don't have
days.
to take off your clothes. Just from the what'd you say? From the chest and face and arms, you can get.
Yeah, you get it all. It's just like, yeah.
Just
So I don't have to be buck naked when I'm outside?
Huh?
I don't have to be buck naked when I go outside now?
Dear God, please let's hope not.
It's good because then the cops come and now you get an exercise running away from the cops.
Okay, so that's sad. Go out in the sun.
Yeah.
Let's talk about medical problems that can be precursors to depression or
Yes.
vice versa. Speaking of what came first, so like thyroid, heart disease.
Thyroid is almost always secondary to adrenals, which is then secondary to lifestyle out of balance.
Okay,
so
think stress,
Chronic
stress relief.
yeah. Chronic stress exhausts or actually prevents thyroid hormone from converting to T3 to then free T3. And then you should be sad and tired and lethargic.
Heart
Which means the fix then is adaptogens and lifestyle changes.
And don't think of it as stress that's just emotional stress. I like to think of it as how are we stressing the body physiologically? Are we stressing it by eating sugar?
Right.
Are we stressing it by, excess insulin production or whatever?
Yeah.
So it's emotional stress and physical stress.
Yeah.
But we're also looking at heart disease. Heart disease, depression is linked with slow recovery, future trouble, and higher death risk for those with people who have heart disease.
But I don't understand. We're like really good at having heart disease. Like we should be happy about that.
So with heart disease, which came first, right?
So
It's probably back and forth with that
So
one.
what's messed up is the medications that they use to treat heart disease actually mess up the calcium pathways and the beta-adrenergic, and so it actually affects our mood and can make people tired and depressed. So like beta blockers, people were like, well, my blood pressure's not elevated, but now I just can't really do a whole lot and I don't feel great. Yeah, you shouldn't. You're taking the medication to force that.
Yeah.
People that take calcium channel blockers, your nerve synapses in your brain require a surge of calcium to release those neurotransmitters. So yeah, you should feel tired and lethargic. And so that sucks because, okay, well then how do I fix the hypertension? Well, then fix the hypertension stuff, which they say, well, you can't 95% of the time, because that's all lifestyle stuff. It's all things like dehydration, hyperglycemic diet, endothelians, stuff that you have control over. So then if you fix that, then you don't need the hypertensive medicine, and then you don't have the secondary depression from the nutrient depletion and the expected side effects of the medication.
Yes. So what's good about this part of the talk? Talking about medical problems and medications, I think this gives you another point of reference. So you can say, oh, hey, this probably just isn't a personality problem, that I have this depression, something that I can't fix. This might be a health problem, the result of a health problem, or the result of a medication I'm taking,
Right.
or my depression might be causing those problems as well. But in terms of how you feel about yourself, I think it's important to look at what is going on in my body physiologically that might be causing it to be worse. So other things, neurological conditions, stroke, nutritional deficiencies.
That's a huge one.
Endocrine disorders, immune diseases, cancer, erectile dysfunction, viruses, all of those things can cause, at least what Harvard is saying is 10 to 15% of all depressions, but I would venture to say more.
I bet they're
a lot more.
Yeah, I bet they're more cyclic too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, absolutely. But you know, there most of those things again, and that's why I do the lifestyle, functional lifestyle medicine, which is the create just everything working the way it's supposed to, and that way we're not trying to chase this thing and chase that thing and figure out which came first. Just fix it all. Just create a lifestyle that's consistent with life longevity, without gimmicks and nonsense, and most all the things just kind of restore.
Yeah, so we're
nice.
the approach is to restore the balance and equilibrium in the body.
What about exercise? That help with depression? I heard that does.
He doesn't like it when I talk about
I
exercise.
do. I don't care. I'm just saying.
Just because I work at the Y.
That's like you saying yoga for every answer.
Yoga. Exercise is like a magic pill,
Boom.
people. It's the one thing we don't want to do, but it is the one thing that can have the biggest effect.
Yeah.
If we're doing it regularly, it increases our BDNF, our brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Which lowers with depression. So you can boost it back up, and that's what grows the brain.
It lowers the brain, right. It lowers that brain shrinkage. So BDNF is basically nerve growth, right? That's a nerve growth factor.
Right.
So we have more nerves.
Boom.
That are more plastic.
Constant potential.
Yes.
Yeah. Exercise exploits all that potential to grow your brain. So that's where you do pickleball, you do badminton, you do racquetball. You know, not just weights and running, but do things you enjoy.
Yes.
Yes.
Have fun being active, because if you don't have fun, you won't want to do it.
Yeah.
So any exercise, if you don't like exercise, you just haven't found the type of activity that you really enjoy.
Right.
So you need to keep searching, because if your idea is, I got to go run on a treadmill for 30 minutes to an hour in a dark gym. I got to drive there. If that's your idea of exercise, your idea is very limited.
Right.
So we want to do fun things, want to be active, want to be standing as much as possible. Even if you're working on stuff around the house, ACSM guidelines are 150 minutes per week, but you can get that in 10-minute increments of moderate intensity. So twice a day for 10 minutes. Yeah. That will get you every day. That will get you your the recommended guideline for exercise per week. But so many benefits from exercise. And I'm going to challenge you with this as well. If you're a person that says, I hate exercise, and actually I have a success story. I have this person that I coach, and she's really funny, but I'll say, so how do you feel when you exercise? Like this is a conversation that we had, and we hadn't gotten further. She wasn't exercising at this time. I said, how do you feel when you exercise? And she's like, awful. I hate it. I'm like, okay, all right. So we probably need to find something you really enjoy, right? So what do you really enjoy? And she was still kind of being iffy about this, and our conversations have been going on for months, right? And just this last visit with her, she said, okay, I have to admit it, I do feel better. She'd started going to the gym. Gym, and she was making funny comments on Facebook about how much she hated it, and but she's still going. And then she said she finally had to admit that she does feel better. So I challenge you to write down beforehand how you're feeling, or maybe just take inventory. How am I feeling before I exercise? What's going on in my body? And then do the same thing after you exercise. And I guarantee you will feel immediately better. So it is an immediate mood boost.
So I had heard that sex and exercise
Sexercise.
are two things that people will resist and be like, oh, I'm too tired, I'm not interested. But once they do it, nobody goes and says, oh, I wish I wouldn't have went and exercised, or I wish I didn't have sex, right? And that's because exercise releases
Unless you throw your back out.
endorphins, and then sex releases endorphins and oxytocin. And so there's a great benefit on the end of that.
Yeah. So exercise is one.
What about
one
sex
way.
after exercising at the Y? Do they have rooms for that, like the sauna room?
Wow.
Is that what that's for, the sauna?
You're opening up a big, big door that does not apply to the YMCA. Okay.
What about some of those local gyms? I heard
I don't know about that.
they're the bathhouses of the 90s.
So,
No?
so moving forward.
I didn't even make a drug reference yet.
So moving forward, best practices. We've talked about adaptogens.
Boom.
We've talked about exercise.
Yeah.
We've talked about building support system.
Did we?
We have not talked about mindfulness.
Don't do that.
We did talk about that in the previous show.
Yeah, you gotta watch the previous one. We'll talk about that.
When you do mindful practices, you connect that brain to that thinking part of the brain that helps you adapt better and not get sucked into that heaviness of that depression.
And rewiring the brain up to 30,000 neurons with 2 weeks of mindfulness.
Yes, so we want to look at for mindfulness if you don't know what to do at all. There are apps, there's Headspace, there's Calm. What are some of the other ones? There's a bunch. Insight Timer.
I use Headspace.
So there's a lot of great ones. So check out apps. Go to meditation groups. Check out YouTube. Go to meditation groups online or in person. Do some reading. If you're not sure how to get started on that, that's a whole other show. But if you don't know where to start at all, but you really want to try something like yoga, that would also be a mindfulness practice that could be very helpful because it is also physical.
Yes.
So you're engaging the body and the mind at the same time, so that might actually be a better mindfulness practice for you if you tend with just the mind to get if it's difficult.
Yeah, and yoga and Tai Chi together. Like either one of those.
Yep, yoga
great.
or Tai Chi, those are both excellent.
Yeah.
What else? Therapy?
Yeah, DBT therapy.
Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy.
Boom. Yeah. That's really great. Because again, it's rewiring the brain and trying to help fix the cognitive behavioral stuff, which is great.
Yeah. Mindfulness practices in general have become more secular and are becoming almost a standard in psychiatric practice or in psychological practice for treatment. So, so nutrition. Do you want to talk to have we talked much about nutrition?
Well, we should talk about that when we talk about happiness. So we can talk about the benefits of, because again, with the anxiety, the depression, the anger, basically we talk about, those
we need
emotions
troubleshooters for
are
those.
okay.
Yeah.
But when we talk about, like next week, we're going to talk about love and what else? That's it? Just love?
Happiness and love.
Love and happiness, right?
Yeah.
And with love and happiness, what we should do is then say, okay, here's the off-ramps for anger, here's the off-ramps for depression, anxiety, but what we want to do is get back on the highway towards happiness and love, and so that's going to really tie in all the things that we should be doing, the research, the best practices, evidence-based stuff of and clinical approaches to really just turning the anger and turning the depression, turning the anxiety into paths to happiness. And, not Pollyannish wise, but of just like, oh, if you just do this, you'll be happy. But no, practice.
By the
to where you
way,
are. Yeah.
speaking of that, in terms of, we're not here to just tell you, oh, this is so easy, and you're thinking on the other side, yeah, right. If you are thinking on the other side, yeah, right, we want you to talk to us. So pose your question, say, well, what about this? Or if we say, well, you need sleep, and you're like, how am I going to sleep? My thoughts are going 45 miles per hour every night. I don't know how I'm going to sleep. We need that feedback and we need that discussion so that we can help you with your specific issues. So we definitely encourage those comments.
Yeah, Yeah, because nothing's over. You know, I have patients that come in crying that it's all going to fall apart and there's no hope in sight, to then just being happy in the same situation. And I've been through that too. I mean, I have 4 daughters and, you know, went through divorce, all that kind of stuff. And you have that kind of sense of like, you think you got to figure it out, but you can't seem to figure it out. But then you have these other people that give insight, and you have your little hero's journey. And it's as much as you think like it's not doable, it's hard. It really isn't that hard. It's just having the right information at the right time and then
And
just
knowing what to do
doing
with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And all the stuff that we tell you is not rocket science, and we didn't figure out any of this stuff. All we do is stand on the shoulders of all the other people that have figured this stuff out and try to put it in a package to where you guys can, you know, benefit from it.
And we also have our stuff too.
That's right.
So we're all in the same boat together. So anyway, we are past time tonight with our first YouTube.
If this was church, people would be pissed off.
What do you mean?
Oh, you don't go past time because people gotta go get food together. Did you ever go to Southern Baptist Church?
I did not.
Oh, well, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for joining us for the
Yes.
first YouTube one instead of Facebook Live.
I don't know if you can share this with your friends, but does that work this way?
Yeah, they can share
So
and
share it, like it,
like, share, comment.
comment. Tell us what you think, the real deal,
Yeah.
your real thoughts.
I mean, if there's something you don't like about the show, or you don't like her glasses, whatever.
I mean, go ahead and speak to us because we listen.
That's right.
All right.
Nosotras escuchan. Is that real?
I
Sounds
don't
like
know
be
what
real.
it is, but
Do you know how to even stop it?
no, I don't. I don't know how we stop the show. Oh, there's
Yeah.
an X up there.
I think that might work. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Please share.